They found his teeth before they found his name, scattered like pearls in gutter water under a yellow streetlight. The sirens came late, and the rain came early, washing truth into the drains. Vincent Cole watched from the mouth of the alley and felt the city look back. Vincent Cole said, "This is wrong," and the steam from his breath carried the lie. Ava Russo picked up the phone and heard her brother's scream crackle, then go to winter silence. Don Salvatore Russo stepped from a black car and did not blink at the blood. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Clean it," and the order sounded older than mercy. Agent Lauren Pratt listened from an unmarked sedan and wrote the night into wiretap margins. Tommy Vale lay somewhere cold and uncounted, and guilt moved like a tide. Vincent Cole felt a crosshair settle that had no rifle and no mercy and no way out. The alley became a rumor the city told itself to feel alive, and Vincent Cole counted the lies by their shine. Vincent Cole said, "I was 3 blocks away," and the night pretended to believe him. The cops took statements like taxes and gave nothing back. Ava Russo replayed the scream until silence grew teeth and bit her resolve. Don Salvatore Russo poured scotch that tasted like old wars and measured its burn against the family's losses. Agent Lauren Pratt drew a map of routes and blind corners and put Vincent at the center like a storm. The crew's text threads throbbed with questions that wore the faces of threats. Tommy Vale's name floated once, then sank under emojis that looked like prayers. Vincent Cole said, "Whoever staged this, they want a funeral more than a body." The rain stopped, and the steam rose, and the city exhaled smoke and secrets. Ava Russo did not pray, but she counted breaths until her pulse surrendered the night. Ava Russo said, "Tell me he's alive," to a voicemail that answered like a grave. The townhouse walls held portraits of victories that had cost too much and learned nothing. Vincent Cole walked the block twice and saw 4 faces pretending not to watch him. Agent Lauren Pratt filed the word orchestrated and underlined it until the page thinned. Don Salvatore Russo phoned a cleaner who never spoke more than 5 words, and none of them were mercy. The water in the alley carried a tooth into a storm drain, and the city swallowed it like a secret tithe. Tommy Vale's jacket turned up on a fence, heavy with rain and stain. Vincent Cole said, "They built a stage and dressed me for the part." The night took a bow and refused to leave the theater. The cleaners arrived like weather, efficient and without faces. Don Salvatore Russo said, "No headlines," and the word fell heavy as a shovel. Vincent Cole watched a crimson stream become a memory under bleach and denial. Agent Lauren Pratt recorded license plates and let them think the dark was their friend. Ava Russo ironed her voice flat and called the driver who took her brother out and brought back only panic. Tommy Vale's laugh echoed from last week, and the present hated him for it. Vincent Cole said, "Check the drop on Halsey," and no one asked how he knew. A camera on a bodega awning blinked its dead red eye and missed history by inches. The Dynasty inhaled, the city paused, and the rain smell left like an alibi. In the quiet after, the teeth were all that proved a man had been loved. Sunrise tried to forgive the blocks and failed. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Family meets at noon," and the sentence sounded like a verdict. Ava Russo dressed in black that drank the light and chose a face that could not be read. Agent Lauren Pratt swapped tapes, labeled them, and felt the weight of a story that would demand blood. Vincent Cole walked home past shopkeepers who hosed sidewalk sins into gutters. The crew posted loyalty and liked it, and did not mean it. A stray dog nosed the alley and refused to enter. Tommy Vale's mother called 3 times and left no message. Vincent Cole said, "They want me to run," and he laced his boots tighter. The day opened its ledger and drew a line under the name of whoever planned the night. Morning found Vincent in his mother's old diner, now a pawnshop with memories in the grout. He touched the booth where he learned to count tips and to watch the door without staring. Vincent Cole said, "I was a good kid once," and the room answered with dust. Det had walked in wearing a smile and a pinky ring, and he signed his future with a nod. Don Salvatore Russo said, "You carry, we cover," and a boy became a courier with borrowed courage. The city taught him silence costs less than truth, and lasts longer. Agent Lauren Pratt read the arrest that never happened, and saw the missing years like bite marks. Ava Russo remembered him as the soldier who never looked at her father when he lied. Vincent Cole said, "I paid what I owed, and the math refused to balance." He could feel Tommy's laugh in the tile, and the shame in his shoes. The teeth from the alley clicked in his head like beads on a rosary he never learned to trust. What? Ava sat at her vanity where Silva learned to lie. She practiced the face that passes through rumors untouched. Ava Russo said, "He is not a stray," to the mirror, and the mirror kept her secret. Childhood smelled like polished wood and burned letters. Don Salvatore Russo taught her birthdays with no candles. At 12 she learned which men in the room were dangerous by who smiled at her father. She remembered Vincent guarding a door while pretending to be a wall. The scream on the phone had been a key turned twice in her ribs. "I can hear." Ava Russo said, "If this is a trap, it is set for him, not me." She opened a drawer and found a gun wrapped in silk, and legacy weighed more than guilt. She chose her coat like armor, and stepped into weather that could not forgive. Agent Lauren Pratt drew circles on a whiteboard until they looked like crosshairs. She pinned routes, drop boxes, prepaid phones, and every bad habit the Dynasty refused to break. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "He is the hinge," and she circled Vincent twice. She remembered a father who kept his badge clean by hiding it. The bureau wanted a ledger, and she wanted a story that ended. She listened again to Ava's silence, and heard calculation breathing. She replayed Don Salvatore telling a joke that bled. Agent Lauren Pratt said no hero work to herself and wrote rules she would soon break. She traced Tommy Vale through gambling slips and hospital receipts that stopped mid-month. The alley teeth sat in evidence and smiled like bait. She called the number that could save a life and ruin a city, and it rang once. Tommy Vale had been the brother the street gives, and then taxes. He taught Vincent where to stand when bullets introduced themselves. "Vincent Cole," said Tommy, "knows the back doors whenever a job turned dark." Tonight, the back doors swallowed him. A nurse at a county ER remembered a man with busted ribs who paid cash and left. Agent Lauren Pratt logged the bill and tasted smoke in the data. Ava Russo scrolled old photos and stopped at Tommy grinning under summer sun. Vincent Cole said, "If he is alive, he is hiding from me," and the words hurt both ways. He knocked at a basement door on Halsey, and the peephole blinked like an injured eye. The building held its breath, and the hallway smelled like bleach and fear. Somewhere a phone vibrated and went quiet like a threat that got tired. Noon gathered the family in a room that believed in wood and silence. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Respect the table," and eyes lowered like blinds. Luca Marino stood behind the Don and smiled without teeth. Ava Russo said, "We lost control of the story," and the statement drew blood. Vincent Cole felt 20 rifles behind every stare, and none were metal. Agent Lauren Pratt waited 2 blocks away with coffee and an impossible offer. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Find the Judas," and the room nodded like a choir. Vincent Cole said, "Give me the street, and I will bring him back," and his voice did not shake. Luca Marino's hands were clean enough to pass inspection and too clean to trust. Ava Russo watched Vincent choose duty and saw the trap tighten. Outside, the city hummed a verdict, and the day sharpened like a blade. The parking garage smelled like rain and rubber in choices that do not forgive. Agent Lauren Pratt taped a wire to Vincent's ribs and counted beats that were not hers. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "You can walk away," and the echo called her a liar. Vincent Cole felt the cold disc like a coin paid to a river. Vincent Cole said, "I walk in, I walk out, I live," and the sentence tried to be true. She slid a recorder into his pocket and wrote a number on his palm like a vow. The bureau circled the Dynasty like winter crows. Ava Russo's phone went to silence, and then to legend. Don Salvatore Russo locked the family doors and let suspicion eat the wallpaper. Luca Marino sharpened his smile and asked for volunteers. Tommy Vale's absence grew teeth and bit every plan. Vincent Cole said, "I am not their Judas," and the building answered with sirens far away. The city approved the gamble and raised the price. The back room of Marlowe's bar held secrets, like a safe with a bad memory. Luca Marino stood near the ice machine and let the cold do the talking. Luca Marino said, "Our money walked, and the room forgot to breathe." Vincent Cole lifted his hands and showed they were empty of answers. He could feel the wire heating like guilt. Don Salvatore Russo's men watched him the way winter watches a broken bird. Vincent Cole said, "Give me the drop roots," and he mapped salvation on a napkin. Luca Marino smiled like a lock that loves its key. Glass sweated and tempers steamed. A neon sign outside coughed red into the smoke and made everyone look like a warning. Vincent's pulse marked the recorder's seconds like a drum at a bad parade. He folded the napkin and felt the trap tighten around its soft paper heart. Ava Russo left no footprints a camera would love. Her townhouse smelled like perfume and departure. Vincent Cole said, "You were never careless," to a room that knew her better. A teacup waited with a perfect lip print like a signature that refused court. Agent Lauren Pratt catalogued the scene without stepping inside. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "She is ahead of us," and wrote the word ghost. Don Salvatore Russo called every driver, and none remembered her face. A window latch had a new scratch and the curtain wore street dust. Vincent Cole found a note that was not a note, just an old ticket stub from Coney. Vincent Cole said, "You want me to follow the memory, not the trail. The city is generous with memories and cruel with trails." He pocketed the stub and heard the wire whisper for confession that did not exist. The warehouse on Kent felt like a bad sermon. Forklifts slept under tops and echoes carried knives. Luca Marino said, "Open the crates," and wooden ribs split like old lies. Inside, there was nothing but air that smelled like new paint. Vincent Cole said, "Someone scrubbed the root and the ledger, and the floor tilted." A soldier accused a second soldier, and the third reached for a gun. Agent Lauren Pratt listened to chaos write its own warrant. The recorder drank every shout like whiskey. Don Salvatore Russo's name cracked through the noise and made everyone older. A shot went into a beam, and sawdust fell like tired snow. Luca Marino smiled without moving his mouth. Vincent Cole said, "We are being erased," and he stepped back from the argument that wanted blood. The streets voted, and the tally was simple. Vincent was the rumor, then the suspect, then the sin. A corner boy whistled, and 3 doors closed. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "We pull you tonight," and her voice argued with duty. Vincent Cole said, "You pull me and they win," and the wire felt heavier than armor. Ava Russo was a shadow that chose its light. Don Salvatore Russo sent blessings that sounded like warnings. Luca Marino bought rounds for men who wanted a throat. A black sedan paced Vincent for 6 blocks, and then forgot him. The city moved its pieces, and asked him to be the board. Vincent Cole said, "Give me 1 more hour," and the knight agreed for a fee. He walked toward the river where promises rust slowly, and where men decide who they will be when the gun is not yet raised. The motel smelled like old rain and newer lies, and the wallpaper curled the way trust does. Agent Lauren Pratt checked the wire and counted breaths she did not own. Agent Lauren Pratt said names, routes, timings, and the pen waited like a knife. Vincent Cole laid out streets and dead drops, and the safe words that were never safe. Vincent Cole said, "You get me Tommy first," and the room leaned in to hear the cost. The recorder blinked like a heartbeat trying to keep pace with fear. Outside, tires hissed on wet blacktop and turned the night into a whispering map. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "You are a hinge, not a hero," and drew a circle around his future. Vincent Cole tasted copper and memory, and tried not to remember being clean. The city pressed its ear to the wall, and promised to charge interest on every secret. The laundromat on Myrtle was a chapel for coins and sins, and both spun in stainless drums. Vincent Cole arrived early and counted exits and faces that pretended not to know him. Luca Marino said, "Leave the bag and leave the noise," through a man who smiled wrong. Agent Lauren Pratt sat a block away and watched reflections instead of doors. Vincent Cole said, "If this stinks, I pull," and the messenger laughed like a fuse. A patrol car drifted by, and the whole room forgot how to breathe. The bag under the folding table weighed more than cash, and exactly like bait. Luca Marino's scout blinked twice from a bus shelter and wrote suspicion in the air. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Abort," into a mic that could not carry mercy. Vincent Cole palmed the bag, left a decoy, and walked out with the heat of a new enemy. Ava Russo unlocked a study that recognized her by blood and by silence. The ledgers waited, where loyalty goes to be laundered. Ava Russo said, "Show me what he never told me," and the paper answered with numbers that bled. Donations wore the names of shell saints, and the dates matched disappearances. Don Salvatore Russo had paid for peace with pieces of his own house. A margin note tied Luca to roots that were never supposed to move. Ava Russo said, "If the fire started here, he poured it," and the truth raised blisters. She photographed pages without shaking, and saved them under a name that could mislead a god. The chandelier hummed like a hive guarding a queen no one loved. She closed the safe, and took the burden every heir inherits when the crown is a curse. The pier on India Street wore fog like a borrowed alibi, and held its breath for gunfire. Luca Marino gathered 3 men, and a doubt with his name on it. Luca Marino said, "Prove your spine," and tossed a throwaway piece that still smelled of solvent. Vincent Cole let the pistol hang like a question that could kill its own answer. A bound courier stared at the water and prayed to currents. Agent Lauren Pratt listened from a van and learned how patience bleeds. Vincent Cole said, "The real rat moved the crates we opened, and he named a root that would sting." Luca Marino smiled small, like a blade testing skin. The bound man gasped when Vincent cut the rope instead of a throat. The fog hid their faces, but not the new line Vincent had chosen to walk. The cathedral of backrooms convened beneath the club, and saints on the wall looked away. Don Salvatore Russo held a worry bead made of old victories and fresher graves. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Someone eats at my table and feeds my enemy," and the air thickened. Vincent Cole felt the wire like ice, while he chose words that would not kill him. Ava Russo stood in shadow and weighed the ledger against her father's pulse. Agent Lauren Pratt tracked every pause and measured which silence belonged to truth. Luca Marino said, he flinched on the pier, and the room tilted toward punishment. Vincent Cole said, "Give me the ferry routes," and offered a futures market in fear. Don Salvatore Russo tapped the bead and granted one last hunt that was also a test. The Dynasty tightened its belt, and the city sharpened the teeth of the trap. The van hummed like a confession booth that charged interest and kept receipts. Agent Lauren Pratt cued the audio, and the knight leaned close to listen. "A voice with a scar," said the crates were theater, and the thief wore a crown. Luca Marino said, "Move the cash to the ferry lockers and let him take credit." Vincent Cole tasted metal, and heard his future priced by men who never bled. A second clip carried a softer blade that cut deeper than gunfire. Ava Russo said, "Call him now and make him choose the pier," and the syllables shook the air. Agent Lauren Pratt said she was steering the storm, and her eyes did not move. Vincent Cole said, "She set the table and I became the meal," and the wire felt heavier. The city outside pretended to be asleep and counted every word like rent. The tape rolled on, and the truth put a knife in his back and asked him to thank it. The chapel smelled like dust and wax and vows that never met daylight. Ava Russo lit a candle and did not ask forgiveness because she did not believe in mercy that cheap. 1. Vincent Cole stepped from the side aisle and left his anger at the door because anger echoes. Ava Russo said, "I made the call to pull the rat into light," and her hands did not shake. Vincent Cole said, "You pulled me instead," and the flame wavered without wind. She spoke of drivers who lied, and a ledger that hid Luca in clean ink. Agent Lauren Pratt waited outside and timed prayers against radio static. Stained glass threw red and blue on faces that would not be saved. Ava Russo said, "I chose the family over you, and the truth chose silence." Vincent Cole said, "He was not after money, he was after me," and the pews learned a new hymn. The candle guttered, and the smoke spelled a warning. No one could read twice. Luca Marino assembled a lesson in a garage that smelled like gasoline and victory posters. 3 soldiers listened, the way dogs watch a door that never opens. Luca Marino said, "He wears a microphone and a halo he did not earn," and laughter came late. A map on the hood named routes that ended in rivers. Vincent Cole did not know the price tag printed next to his heartbeat. Don Salvatore Russo waited upstairs and weighed loyalty like dice in a crooked cup. Agent Lauren Pratt traced burners that woke only when Lucas smiled. A mechanic's radio played a song about promises that rust. Luca Marino said, "Tonight we close his mouth, and we open the Don's chair," and the room nodded. The plan turned on a ferry locker and a clock with missing hands. The garage door shuddered, and the city tossed a coin that would land on bone. The motel room felt smaller now that the truth needed furniture. Agent Lauren Pratt slid a form across laminate and watched a man decide who he was. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "You give us Luca and the roots. We give you a life with a new name." Vincent Cole counted the names that would turn into arrests and funerals and ghosts. Vincent Cole said, "Ava walks clear if I walk away dirty." And the paper waited. The tape recorder winked like a devil that offers honest terms. Outside, the neon stuttered and spelled mercy wrong on the blinds. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "I am not your priest, but I will hear you," and she meant it. He wrote locations that smelled like bleach and money and winter. He left one space blank where a heart used to be, and signed anyway. The city changed nothing and everything in the time it took the ink to dry. Coney after midnight wore its lights like bruises that learned to smile. The wheel turned slow, and the wind stole words before they could wound. Ava Russo arrived with a scarf that hid nothing important. Ava Russo said, "He moves at dawn, and he will take the dawn with him," and fear finally showed. Vincent Cole said, "You give me the locker, and I give you tomorrow," and the sea applauded. She handed a number written in pencil and faith. A shadow by the shutter blinked wrong, and the boardwalk learned tension again. Agent Lauren Pratt parked 2 blocks down, and her heartbeat kept the time. Luca Marino had already priced this meeting, and paid in watchers and knives. Vincent Cole said, "This ends before the sun remembers our names," and the deal became a dare. The wheel paused at the top like a held breath that would soon fall. The funeral smelled like lilies and loaded intentions, and the rain wrote psalms on black umbrellas. Vincent Cole walked into the chapel in the same suit he wore to bury his father. Agent Lauren Pratt watched from the choir loft and counted exits like beads. Don Salvatore Russo stood at the aisle, and age leaned on his shoulders. Ava Russo said, "Let them mourn first," and her eyes did not blink. Luca Marino said, "Family to the front," and the pews became a firing line no one could see. Vincent Cole felt the wire kiss his ribs, and tasted metal. That was not blood. A pallbearer shifted wrong, and the air learned a new grammar. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Hold your fire," and the radio trembled. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Today is mercy," and the doors swung open like a sentence. The first shot came from the vestibule, and the lilies fell as if they had rehearsed. The ambush spilled into daylight, and the street took communion in sirens. Vincent Cole dragged the dawn behind a stone saint, and counted shooters by rhythm. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Unit 2 on the south door," and her voice cut clean. Ava Russo pressed a hand to her father's sleeve and found blood that argued with pride. Luca Marino said, "End it," and his men obeyed like weather. A hearse rolled as cover and became a barricade with chrome prayers. Vincent Cole said, "Smoke the exits," and a fire extinguisher coughed white absolution. The gunfire stuttered, and the city looked away out of habit. Agent Lauren Pratt took a flank with eyes that did not forgive. Don Salvatore Russo said, "I am not leaving," and time disagreed. Vincent Cole shoved him toward the sacristy and faced a doorway that wanted him dead. The bell tolled noon and counted the bodies that were not finished falling. The sacristy turned into a confession that lacked a priest. Don Salvatore Russo sat, and the blood on his cuff learned to dry. Ava Russo said, "You paid for peace with our bones," and the ledger pages burned in her stare. Don Salvatore Russo said, "I bought time," and the word sounded like winter. Vincent Cole sealed the door with a pew and measured how long wood could hold fate. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Ends is 5 out," and the radio lied kindly. The Don looked at Vincent and saw the boy who used to count tips. Don Salvatore Russo said, "If Luca sits in my chair, the city forgets our name with relief." Ava Russo said, "Then we erase him first," and her hands did not shake. Vincent Cole said, "Locker K-17 at dawn was the stage," and truth lifted its curtain. The dawn exhaled a life of smoke and nodded like judgment. Outside, the guns quieted as if listening. The ferry lockers faced the river like tea. Dawn bled gray over steel and gulls wrote curses on the wind. Luca Marino arrived with men who believed in promotions. Luca Marino said, "Open K-17," and the padlock clicked like a verdict. Inside sat cash enough to buy a small war and a phone that was already dialing. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Now," and the pier answered in badges. Vincent Cole stepped from a column and aimed at history. A van door slammed, and the city chose sides. The bound figure by the bollard lifted his head, and memory punched the breath from Vincent. Tommy Vale said, "I am still here," and his smile was broken and brave. Luca Marino pulled him close, and the standoff learned a new word for pain. The moment stretched until it begged for mercy and got none. Vincent Cole said, "Let him walk," and the river held its breath. Luca Marino said, "Trade your future for his," and the math turned cruel. Agent Lauren Pratt moved 2 steps that wrote her into the line of fire. Tommy Vale said, "Do not bargain," and his eyes apologized for every debt. Don Salvatore Russo's car rolled to the curb, and Legacy stepped onto wet concrete. Don Salvatore Russo said, "End it with my name still worth a prayer," and the wind swallowed half. Luca Marino shifted his aim toward the Don, and fate snapped. Ava Russo fired once from the sedan's shadow, and the bullet chose Luca's throat. Vincent Cole caught Tommy as he fell free, and history changed clothes. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Hands to a world that finally listened." The river started breathing again, and the Dynasty began to burn. The dock exhaled smoke and sirens while dawn tried to clean what it could not forgive. Agent Lauren Pratt read rights with a voice that did not shake and a hand that almost did. Vincent Cole said, "You breathe, Tommy," and his jacket became a tourniquet that remembered friendship. Ava Russo kept both hands high and watched the pistol cool beside Luca's blood. Don Salvatore Russo steadied himself against the sedan and looked older than the river. Don Salvatore Russo said, "Take my daughter home," and the words limped but stood. MDs rolled a gurney that squeaked like an old secret. Vincent Cole said, "It ends here," and the water agreed for once. Agent Lauren Pratt logged the weapon and the locker and the weight of a dynasty in collapse. The gulls circled like jurors who had already voted. The bag of cash looked small against the sky and learned what evidence feels like. The courthouse smelled like paper and verdicts, and every footstep sounded paid for. Agent Lauren Pratt carried ledgers that weighed more than gold in daylight. Don Salvatore Russo said, "I will not beg," and the cuffs answered with a tired clink. Ava Russo gave a statement that fit in 2 pages and a lifetime. Ava Russo said, "I shot a man who would have buried us," and the stenographer blinked slow. Vincent Cole signed a cooperation agreement with a name that would soon be retired. And Agent Lauren Pratt said, "You will testify clean," and the margin notes nodded. The elevator closed on a family that used to own floors like this. Prosecutors warmed their voices for history class. Don Salvatore Russo looked at the seal and saw a headstone. Vincent Cole said, "I keep my word," and the pen left a scar the city could audit. The safehouse lot glowed like a cheap stage, and the scene insisted on honesty. Vincent Cole stood between 2 sodium pools and practiced being nobody. Ava Russo said, "I will not wear his crown," and the night believed her. Vincent Cole said, "You saved Tommy, and you saved me," and the sentence cut both ways. Agent Lauren Pratt waited by the sedan and pretended she could not hear goodbye. Ava Russo said, "They will call it betrayal," and the wind filed that under truth. Vincent Cole said, "I was the hinge, not the door," and his smile failed. She stepped in close and gave him a name she would never speak again. Agent Lauren Pratt said, "Time and the future got in the car first." Vincent Cole watched her leave and learned how silence can be heavy and kind at once. The lot emptied, and his shadow found room to breathe. The terminal turned people into departures, and Ava joined the procession without ceremony. Announcements stitched the air and unpicked a life. Ava Russo said, "I will not inherit a throne made of warrants," and the passport agreed. She carried 1 bag and the weight of a bullet that had chosen correctly. The city glittered behind tempered glass like a rumor she could no longer afford. Agent Lauren Pratt watched from a balcony and did not wave. "Agent Lauren Pratt," said clearance granted, and a gate opened like a slow forgiveness. Don Salvatore Russo's portrait stared from a news screen, while numbers crawled under it. Ava Russo said, "Tell him I learned to sleep with the lights on," and the message stayed unsent. She passed the last camera without looking back, and the lens blinked like a tired eye. Exile felt like weather she could outwalk if she kept moving. The diner in a coastal town smelled like coffee and honest grease, and anonymity poured refills. Vincent Cole wore a name that fit like a borrowed jacket, and tried to like it. The television murmured about sentencing and restitution, and eras that end. Agent Lauren Pratt boxed photographs in an office that remembered the case, and not the cost. Tommy Vale called from physical therapy, and laughed like a man who rented tomorrow. Don Salvatore Russo faced years that counted slower than grief. Ava Russo was a rumor reported from foreign hotels where the staff admired silence. Vincent Cole said, "I keep moving," and the waitress wrote it down as decaf. The door chime rang like a small absolution, and then the wind took it back. The narrator will tell you the truth he learned when the city went quiet. There is no retirement plan for ghosts. Only roots that stay ahead of the past.